Cantabria, Spain, March 30th, 1919. Inside a small village church, a priest is hearing confessions. In front of the altar, as it has for 200 years, hangs a large carved wooden Christ, head bowed, eyes half closed in agony. It has always been there. Then a 12-year-old girl steps away from the pew, walks up to the confessional, and whispers a sentence the priest dismisses as childish imagination. "Father, the Christ has closed his eyes." The priest doesn't believe her and keeps hearing confessions. But that girl isn't the last one to say it. In the days that follow, others begin to see the same thing. And what happens next will turn a village of a few thousand souls into the second most visited pilgrimage site in Europe, more visited than Lourdes. But as we'll see, the most extraordinary part of this story isn't what the faithful saw, it's what the skeptics saw. The crucifix is called the Christ of the Agony of Limpias. It has stood in the Church of San Pedro since at least the 18th century, a gift from a local nobleman, Don Diego de la Piedra, who in his will left money to build it a fitting altar. For 2 centuries, it was an object of simple devotion, one of thousands of wooden crucifixes scattered across the churches of Spain. Nothing set it apart. Until, in the spring of 1919, something changed. After the girl, the rumors multiplied. People said the Christ's eyes were moving, that the body seemed alive, that the face turned pale, sweated, sometimes bled, that the mouth opened slightly, as if about to speak. In Limpias, a village no one in Spain could have pointed to on a map until then, word spread faster than anyone expected. On April 13th, Palm Sunday, 2 prominent men from the village, public figures, non-believers, convinced this was all mass hysteria stirred up by the priests, decided to put an end to it once and for all. They wanted to expose the whole thing in front of everyone. They walked up to the image to prove there was nothing there. And according to the accounts of the time, as they approached, they saw the Christ's eyes and mouth move. The 2 men fell to their knees and asked forgiveness for their lack of faith. Their testimony matters precisely because they weren't pilgrims looking for a sign. They were the men who had come specifically to prove the sign didn't exist. And that scene, retold across the village, was what convinced even the most skeptical. If even they had broken down, maybe there really was something to see. The church began to fill. Not just villagers, people came from all over Cantabria, then from all over Spain. A journalist who traveled there in person wrote that he saw the jaw move as if it had spoken a word of 2 syllables, and that he clearly heard 2 words, "I love you." But what sets this story apart from so many others is what happened next. Because we're not talking about a story passed down by word of mouth. We're talking about 8,000 people who put their signature on a document. Faced with a phenomenon that could no longer be ignored, church authorities began systematically collecting testimonies. Not rumors from a bar, written statements, signed and formally recorded. Among the witnesses were not only devout peasants ready to see a miracle anywhere. There were doctors, lawyers, army officers, self-declared atheists who came out of curiosity or mockery, and even members of royal families. Spain's King Alfonso XIII visited Limpias in July 1919. Years later, even the Hungarian royal family came and took a statue of the Christ back home with them as a symbol of hope. Within 2 years, Limpias, a village that before 1919 appeared in no tourist guide, became the second most visited pilgrimage site in Europe, surpassed only by Rome. By 1921, it was drawing more pilgrims than Lourdes. Among the testimonies collected, one in particular shows just how different this place had become from an ordinary village church. A priest who arrived from Gijón with a group of pilgrims, mostly sailors, said he had walked into that church like walking into any other place and walked out shaken. These weren't credulous farmers looking for any sign at all. They were seafaring men, used to distrusting tall tales, and even they, standing before that wooden face, no longer knew what to think. The volumes of collected testimonies are said to have surpassed 8,000 signatures. They were kept in the sacristy of the Church of San Pedro. And here the story takes a bitter turn. Because those documents, the written proof of everything thousands of people swore they had seen, barely exist anymore. In 1936, the Spanish Civil War broke out. Churches were among the first targets of revolutionary violence. Almost all the record books from Limpias were burned. Only one survived, the third volume, along with a few scattered pages recovered here and there. Everything else, thousands of signatures, first-hand accounts, the documentation that might one day have been examined by a commission, turned to ash. What remains today are the surviving fragments and the stories passed down by those who had read them before they were lost. The phenomena didn't stop in 1919. They continued with lessening intensity until 1924, and then sporadically into the 1930s. For 15 years, in a small village in Cantabria, generation after generation of pilgrims kept telling the same thing, that those wooden eyes, at certain moments, seemed to be looking at them. Today, the crucifix is still there in the Church of San Pedro in Limpias. Anyone can go see it. It no longer makes headlines. The crowds of 1921 are long gone. But every year, even now, someone still makes the journey up there, sits in silence before that carved face, and stays to look, wondering, just as thousands wondered a century ago, whether those eyes really move, or whether it's only the light playing tricks on us. In 1920, according to some accounts of the time, more than 1,000 healings were reported in and around Limpias, attributed to invoking the Christ of the Agony, or to simply touching the small printed images of his face that by then were circulating across Spain. None of those healings was ever examined by an official medical board, the way they are, for instance, at Lourdes. We may never know for certain what happened in this small Spanish village, and perhaps, in the end, that isn't even the most important question. The real question is another one. Why did thousands of people from every walk of life, including the most skeptical among them, fall to their knees before that wood, asking for forgiveness? You don't need to decide whether the Christ of Limpias truly moved his eyes to be moved by this story. Just look at what it stirred in people. Men who walked in to expose a fraud and walked out in tears, begging mercy for their own disbelief. Perhaps the true wonder of Limpias was awakening faith in those who looked, because in Limpias, even those who didn't believe were forced to stop and look. Christ of the agony of Limpias, you who for a century have brought even the hardest hearts to their knees, teach me to stand before mystery without needing to explain it all away. Open my eyes, as they say you once opened yours, to the presence of God in the things I cannot understand. God bless us all.